Steve Harvey was about to kick a contestant off his show for the first time in Family Feud history. The phone ringing on stage was the final straw, the ultimate disrespect to the production. The one rule you never break. But when he heard what the caller had to say, Steve did something that made 200 audience members burst into tears and caused him to shut down production completely. What happened next would save a teenage girl's life and change the way millions of people think about fate, timing, and the mysterious forces that sometimes intervene exactly when we need them most. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October 2023 at the Family Feud studio in Atlanta. The day had started like any other taping day, with crew members bustling around, checking lights, adjusting cameras, making sure everything was perfect for the 2 episodes they were scheduled to film. Steve arrived early as he always did, spending time with the production team and warming up the studio audience with his natural charisma and quick wit. The energy was electric, filled with anticipation and the competitive spirit that made Family Feud one of America's most beloved game shows. The Illington family from Minnesota was facing off against the Thompson family from Florida. Both families had been through the rigorous selection process, the rehearsals, the strict briefing about studio rules. One rule was emphasized above all others. Phones must be turned off completely. Not on silent, not on vibrate, but completely powered down. The production assistant had stressed this point 3 times during the pre-show meeting, explaining that any phone interruption could ruin an entire segment and cost the production thousands of dollars in lost time. Emily Illington, a 42-year-old veterinarian from Minneapolis, had nodded along with everyone else. She'd turned her phone off, or at least she thought she had. But in the excitement and nervousness of being on television, of standing just feet away from Steve Harvey himself, she'd only managed to put it on silent mode. It was a mistake that would turn into something no one could have predicted. The game was in full swing. The Illington family was trailing slightly, down by about 30 points. But the energy was high and the answers were getting good laughs from both Steve and the audience. Emily stood second in line, her hands clasped in front of her, watching her brother Marcus nail a particularly tricky question about things people do at the beach. The board lit up with build sandcastles and the family erupted in celebration. Steve was in the middle of one of his famous reactions, that perfect combination of surprise and approval that had made him such a beloved host when it happened. A phone rang. Not just any ring, but a loud, clear, unmistakable ringtone that cut through the studio like a knife. The melody was classical, something from Mozart, completely out of place in the high-energy game show. Environment. The studio fell silent instantly. 200 audience members stopped mid-cheer. The cameras kept rolling, but the camera operators looked confused. Steve Harvey's expression shifted from joy to confusion, to something approaching controlled frustration. Everyone knew the rules. Everyone knew phones were supposed to be off. Emily's face went white as she realized the sound was coming from her pocket. Her hand flew to her jacket, fumbling to silence the phone, but in her panic she accidentally answered it instead. Before she could end the call, a voice came through, faint but audible in the dead silence of the studio. "Emily Illington," the voice said. "This is Dr. Patterson from Minneapolis General. We need you to know immediately." Steve Harvey raised his hand, and something in his expression stopped Emily from hanging up. Maybe it was the sudden seriousness in his eyes, or maybe it was the fact that hospitals don't call for trivial reasons. Whatever it was, Steve made a split-second decision that went against every protocol in television production. "Put it on speaker," Steve said quietly but firmly. Emily's hands were shaking as she pulled the phone out and touched the speaker button. The voice of Dr. Patterson filled the studio, clear and professional. "Miss Illington, I'm calling about your daughter Rebecca. There's been a development with her position on the transplant list." The studio remained absolutely silent. Emily's family members moved closer to her instinctively. Steve Harvey, who had been standing by his podium, walked over to Emily's side. "Go ahead, doctor," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. What the audience didn't know, what even most of Emily's extended family didn't fully understand, was that Emily's 16-year-old daughter Rebecca had been on a kidney transplant waiting list for 3 years. Born with a rare genetic condition that had slowly destroyed her kidney function, Rebecca had been on dialysis since she was 13. The wait for a matching donor had been agonizing, filled with false hopes and crushing disappointments. Emily had almost canceled their Family Feud appearance when Rebecca's condition had worsened 2 weeks earlier, but Rebecca herself had insisted they go. "Mom, you need this," she had said from her hospital bed. "You need to laugh, to have fun, to remember there's still good stuff happening. Go win some money for my college fund." It was so perfectly Rebecca, thinking of others even while fighting for her life. Dr. Patterson's voice continued through the phone speaker. "We found a match. It's perfect, Emily. 6 out of 6 HLA markers. The donor is here. The organ is viable. And we need Rebecca here within the next 4 hours for preparation." Emily's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Steve Harvey hadn't caught her arm, steadying her while she processed what she was hearing. Her mother, standing behind her, started crying. Her brother Marcus whispered, "Oh my God. I'm in Atlanta," Emily managed to say. "We're filming. I don't know if we can make it in time." Steve Harvey did something then that would later be described as the moment that defined not just his show, but his character as a human being. He took the phone from Emily's trembling hand. "Dr. Patterson, this is Steve Harvey. I'm here with Emily. What exactly do we need to do to make this happen?" There was a pause on the other end, presumably as Dr. Patterson processed the fact that he was suddenly talking to a celebrity. But doctors are nothing if not practical, and he quickly refocused. "Mr. Harvey, Rebecca needs to be at the hospital within 4 hours for preoperative preparation. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, but the window is critical. The donor organ won't remain viable beyond that time frame." Steve looked at his watch, then at his production team. The math was simple and unforgiving. A commercial flight from Atlanta to Minneapolis would take at least 2.5 hours, plus time to get to the airport, through security, and then from the Minneapolis airport to the hospital. It would be close. Probably too close. "Hold on 1 minute, doctor," Steve said. He handed the phone back to Emily and pulled out his own phone. The entire studio watched as Steve Harvey made a call. "Marcus, it's Steve. I need the jet now. Atlanta to Minneapolis. Medical emergency. I don't care what it costs. Fulton County Airport. How fast can you have it ready?" 30 minutes. Make it 20. Steve turned back to Emily and her family. "My friend has a private jet at Fulton County Airport. It's 15 minutes from here. You'll be in Minneapolis in under 2 hours." Emily started to protest, presumably about the cost, the imposition, the fact that they were in the middle of filming a show. Steve cut her off with a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. "Emily, listen to me. There are moments in life when everything else becomes background noise. This is one of those moments. Your daughter needs you, and we're going to make sure you get there." He turned to address the studio audience, the cameras still rolling, capturing every second of this unprecedented moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do something we've never done in the history of Family Feud. We're going to pause this game because life just gave this family something more important than any prize we could offer." The audience began to applaud, but Steve raised his hand for silence. "But here's what else we're going to do. Emily, while you're flying to Minneapolis, we're going to film a message for Rebecca. Every single person in this studio is going to send their prayers, their love, their positive energy to your daughter." He turned to the cameras. "And when this airs, millions of people are going to see this moment, and they're going to be pulling for Rebecca too." The production team scrambled into action. Within minutes, they had arranged for a car to take the Illington family to the airport. But before they left, Steve had one more surprise. "Thompson family," he called to their opponents. "What do you say we help the Illingtons out here?" Without hesitation, the Thompson family patriarch, a retired firefighter named Bill, stepped forward. "Steve, we forfeit. The Illingtons win. They need to go, and they need to go with good news." The gesture was so unexpected, so purely generous, that Emily broke down completely. Here were strangers, people she'd met just hours ago, giving up their chance at thousands of dollars in prizes so her family could leave with something positive. Steve nodded, clearly moved. "That's what I'm talking about. That's what family really means. Not just the people who share your blood, but the people who share your humanity." As the Illington family gathered their things, preparing to rush to the airport, Steve had the cameras focus on Emily one more time. "Emily, you tell Rebecca that she's got an entire Family Feud family pulling for her. You tell her that when she's better, we're bringing your whole family back to finish this game properly." Emily hugged Steve, unable to speak through her tears. Her mother, her brother, her teenage son all hugged him too. The Thompson family joined in, and soon it seemed like everyone in the studio was part of this massive group embrace. "Go," Steve said finally. Go get your daughter her kidney." The Illington family rushed out of the studio to the waiting car. The studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't the usual game show celebration. It was something deeper, more meaningful. It was the sound of 200 people who had just witnessed something extraordinary. Steve turned back to the cameras, visibly emotional. In all my years of hosting this show, I've seen families win money, cars, prizes, but I've never seen anything like what just happened here. A phone that wasn't supposed to ring, rang. A call that could have come at any other time came at exactly this moment. And a family that was playing a game just got the only prize that really matters, a chance to save their daughter's life. He continued, his voice thick with emotion. "You know, we have all these rules in television. Don't do this, don't do that. Keep everything moving, stick to the format. But sometimes life reminds you that the rules don't matter. People matter. Families matter. And sometimes a game show becomes something more than entertainment. Sometimes it becomes a reminder of what's really important." The next few hours were a whirlwind. Steve's friend's jet was ready in 18 minutes. The Illington family made it to Minneapolis in an hour and 45 minutes. Emily was at the hospital with 20 minutes to spare. The production team at Family Feud monitored the situation throughout the night, keeping Steve updated via text message. At 6:47 the next morning, Steve received the message he'd been waiting for. The surgery had begun. Rebecca was in the operating room, and everything was proceeding perfectly. When the episode aired 6 weeks later, the network made an unprecedented decision. They aired it unedited, including the phone call, the scramble to get the family to the airport, and Steve's emotional address to the audience. They also included an update that Rebecca's surgery had been successful, and she was recovering well. The response was overwhelming. The video went viral within hours, not just because of the drama of the moment, but because of what it represented. In a world that often feels cynical and divided, here was proof that people still care about each other, that strangers will come together to help someone in need, and that sometimes breaking the rules is exactly the right thing to do. But the story didn't end there. 3 months after the surgery, the Illington family returned to Family Feud. Rebecca came with them, healthy and glowing, her new kidney functioning perfectly. When she walked onto the stage, Steve Harvey, who had maintained his composure through thousands of episodes, openly wept. "There she is," he said, his voice breaking, "the real champion of Family Feud." Rebecca, with the confidence that comes from facing death and winning, walked straight up to Steve and hugged him. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for breaking the rules." The phone call that interrupted Family Feud that day lasted exactly 2 minutes and 37 seconds, but its impact lasted forever. It proved that sometimes the most important moments in life come disguised as interruptions, that rules are meant to serve humanity, not the other way around, and that a game show studio can become sacred ground when people choose compassion over competition. When Emily Illington's phone rang on the Family Feud stage, everyone involved had a choice: follow the rules or follow their hearts. They chose their hearts, and in doing so, they created a moment that transcended television, that proved human kindness is not scripted, and that sometimes the best thing that can happen on a game show has nothing to do with the game at all.